those of you, if you've not heard this story, there were 3 Palestinian students that were actually shot in Burlington, Vermont. Now, obviously, this is Bernie Sanders' territory. You can see this here. Here are their pictures. I just wanted to show you. It says an unprovoked attack has left 3 Palestinian students wounded in Burlington, Vermont. Walking down Prospect Street, was allegedly shot by a man brandishing a handgun. At this point in time, they said the motive was still unclear, but we have more information about that. These are the 3 Palestinian students, again, just here trying to get an education. You can't even get an education nowadays. So I want to go ahead and go to this clip here from MSNBC where it said the ADC calls on the FBI to investigate Vermont shooting on Palestinians as hate motivated event. Here we go.
Fast with this breaking news from Vermont, where 3 Palestinian students were injured after multiple shootings in Burlington. It happened Saturday night. Police say they found 2 men suffering from gunshot wounds when they arrived and found then a 3rd victim just a short distance away. Authorities have identified the victims as 3 20-year-old Palestinian students who had just gathered to enjoy their Thanksgiving break. Let's go to NBC's Emma Barnett, who's in Burlington for us. Emma, welcome. So do authorities have any information on either a shooter or any potential motive?
Alex, we don't have any information yet on either of those things, but let me tell our audience what we do know. As you mentioned in your intro there, these were 3 Palestinian students who were on their way to dinner. They're all students at American universities. They're all 20 years old. They were wearing Palestinian scarves, the symbols of the keffiyeh, and they all attend American universities. And they were on their way to dinner when a man approached them with a pistol and shot 4 rounds at them, did not say anything. And right now they are being treated in the hospital behind me at the University of Vermont Medical Center. One of them is said to be in critical condition. I want to read you some statements that we've gotten from different organizations. The Arab American Discrimination Statement said, given the information collected and provided, it's clear that the hate was a motivating factor in this shooting, and we call on law enforcement to investigate it as such. The Council of American Islamic Relations is offering a $10,000 reward for information on the shooting targeting the 3 Palestinians in Vermont. And the FBI says we are aware of the incident in Burlington, and we are working with our state and local partners in Vermont in the course of the local of the local investigation information comes to light of a potential federal violation, the FBI is prepared to investigate. And Alex, of course, this comes at a time where Jewish and Muslim students have been forced to confront violent threats in different university settings and across the country as tensions continue to simmer on in the Middle East.
Let me pause here for just a second. A couple of days ago, I said that I've seen a rise of Islamophobia in this country, similar to what I saw after September 11. And I stand by that. This is just one incident that we know about, one that was reported, but there have been other incidents that have happened as well. And this is very, very troubling because I remember what it was like then. So it's just, for all the times I've seen people say, you know, we have to protect. First of all, we have to protect everybody, right? Nobody should be treated this way, regardless of what your ethnicity is or what your religion is. No one should be treated this way. But there is a certain type of hate in this country that I have seen in reference to Islamophobia, like, again, since September 11, it has continued to increase over the years. Burlington, Vermont.
Okay, so then one quick question, well, there are 2, because I'm curious how far away where they were shot is from the University of Vermont. And just to be clear, these 3 Palestinian men, they are not students at the University of Vermont. Is that correct?
To answer your second question first, no, they are not students at the University of Vermont. So far, we have confirmed that one is a student at Haverford, the other at Trinity, and it is believed the third is a student at Brown. We are still waiting for an official statement from Brown University. And this all happened in Burlington, which is in the relative circumference of the University of Vermont. It's all pretty close by. I don't have an exact location for you yet, but I'll get that to you next time.
Yeah. So that is when it was reported. Now, more information has been released about this particular story. They did discuss this on CNN. And I want to give a shout out to Case Study QB because they have actually now arrested a suspect in reference to the shooting, which I was worried that they would not find the perpetrator, but it appears that they have. So shout out to Case Study QB for this clip, where it says suspect is arrested in reference to this particular shooting.
In the meantime, breaking overnight, a suspect is in custody in the shooting of 3 Palestinian college students in Vermont. He is expected to be arraigned today, and we are expecting an update from the Burlington police this morning. Authorities are looking into whether this shooting was a hate crime. CNN's Polo Sandoval is in Burlington, Vermont this morning. Bring us up to speed, Polo.
Hey, John, it is quiet on this tranquil street this morning. Hard to believe that the block that you see behind me, that is where those 3 Palestinian American students were shot on Saturday evening.
What's interesting here is when he says it's hard to believe that this happened here. No, it's not. Hate happens anywhere. I never understood that. It's hard to believe that it happened in this town. It happened in this location. No, it's not hard to believe it. It can happen anywhere. So I don't know why reporters say this.
Police here in Burlington identifying the suspect who was arrested just yesterday, reportedly actually lives right in front of where that shooting took place. Police identifying him as 48-year-old Jason Eaton, a local man that expects to face various charges in an arraignment in any moment now. We do understand the way this all went down on Saturday, that these 3 young men identified by an organization working with the families as Tashin Ali Ahmad, Kinan Abdelhamid, and also Hisham Awatani were actually on their way to dinner. They were visiting Vermont. They attend schools in other states. That is when this 48-year-old man, according to police, approached them with a handgun and then opened fire. The big question right now is why. When you hear from various Arab American civil rights organizations and the families themselves, they believe that they were specifically targeted because of what they were wearing. Here's what an attorney representing the families told CNN just yesterday.
The suspect walked up to them and shot them. They weren't robbed. They weren't mugged. It was a targeted shooting and a targeted crime. And they were wearing the keffiyeh, very symbolic of the Palestinian cause, the Palestinian culture and history. Their identity played a role in them being targeted.
So this reminds me again after September 11, where there were certain Arab people in the United States that did not feel comfortable wearing, I think it's called a hijab, the scarf the women wear around the hijab. They weren't comfortable wearing that because of some of the blatant, overtly racist attacks that were happening to Arab people in the United States after September 11. I can't imagine just being afraid to just be yourself, right? Some people don't understand that. Some people will never have to worry about that and what that feels like to not be able to just express your full self because someone who is racist or bigoted may attack you in some kind of way just because of what you represent. And I think that it's really sad. It's really unfortunate. These are kids. And this isn't the only one. There was another incident that I talked about on the show where it was a little boy who was killed by the landlord. And the landlord said that he felt, based on what he heard in the media, that basically his tenants, his Palestinian tenants, these were bad people. So he just killed a little boy. Now, I say they're kids. To me, college students are still kids, right? And even when we talk about that little boy in Michigan. But I want you to understand that sometimes some people don't see you as a kid. They see you as a threat. Now, we can also link this back to African Americans in this country as well. You know, a lot of people they love little black boys like when they're young, like when they're babies, they're toddlers. People will come up to them and say, "Oh, he's so cute. He's so adorable. Look at those, so adorable." But when black boys in particular become a certain age, they're no longer seen that way by certain people in this country. Some people see them as a threat and treat them as such. Why would this man leave his house and shoot these kids? How were they a threat? Let's continue.
Now, having heard that, and to be clear, Burlington Police, who's actually the head of this investigation, saying that they are still in the process of looking through all of the evidence here at hand. They actually worked with the ATF and still in contact with the FBI as they actually made that arrest yesterday. So still many questions, and this community, John, certainly shaken to its core as the community calling for this to be investigated as a hate crime, though again, police saying that investigation has not officially led them there yet.
What's the condition of the 3 students, Polo?
So we know that at least one of them is in critical condition. Something to share with you about Hisham al-Wartani, who is the one that you see on the right in that group photo that was actually taken just moments before the shooting. His family actually sharing a photo with CNN showing him in his hospital bed. He appears to be in good spirits. However, his family also saying the doctors are right now trying to increase the blood flow to his spine. As we reported yesterday, another organization working with the family saying that he likely has a bullet lodged in his spine. So there's still a lot of concerns about what his recovery will be like. And I can also tell you, John, that the family members for at least 2 of those 3 children, those young men, I should say, are trying to get here to Burlington as they live in Palestine.
All right, Polo Sandoval, keep us posted.
Okay, so you heard about the condition, at least of the student that is on the right. I'll keep you guys updated about this. But of course, you know, since this is Bernie Sanders' area, of course, they did question Bernie Sanders and they did ask him, what does he think about this incident? So Bernie could not remain silent about this. So let's go ahead and get into this discussion here. Hold on one second. Let me log back in again to this. Just want to see my thing. Want to get into this discussion here with Bernie Sanders, because I think that, you know, when it's your constituent, it's your area. Like, you can't run from this. You can't run from it. Let's go ahead and get into this.
With me now is Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders, thanks so much for being with us. When you first heard about this shooting and learned that it happened in Burlington, where you were mayor, where you've lived for decades, what was your reaction?
Shock and disbelief. It really is quite unbelievable. And
no, it's not. See, I wanted you to hear that. What Bernie doesn't want to admit is that hate crimes are not uncommon in Vermont. It's not shocking. It's not unbelievable. All you have to do is talk to some of the immigrant communities, particularly those that have come from African countries that have moved to places like Burlington, Vermont. All you have to do is talk to other minority groups that have moved to Burlington, Vermont, because they've been recruited for employment there, because Vermont, like Maine, is one of those states where they're actually trying to get people to move to for certain positions, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the dentist industry as well, because those kind of states, they're starting to lose people in those fields as they get older and retire. So they have been trying to recruit people to come and live there. I know this. I have a friend that moved there because they were partly recruited. So the thing is this, Burlington is not like this innocent place. Vermont is not this innocent place. It has issues just like every other state, and it does have racial issues there. There is hate there in Vermont. You know, just because it's Bernie Sanders' state doesn't mean that these things do not happen. They do happen. And all you have to do, Bernie Sanders, is to talk to other minority groups that live in Burlington, Vermont, and they will tell you about the same type of hatred that they receive.
The people of our city are very disturbed by this, and I know that everybody in the state of Vermont is wishing these young men the best in their recovery and hope, they recover fully and as speedily as possible.
So obviously authorities have not yet publicly assigned a motive. How likely do you think it is that this was a hate crime?
Well, there is an investigation going on, and you don't want to jump the gun, but I think...
No, we're going to jump that gun. Because here's the thing. Notice that when it's a crime committed against Palestinians, we don't want to jump the gun. We have to further investigate to see if it was a hate crime. But when it's a crime that happens to someone that is Israeli or someone that is Jewish in this country, mainstream media jump the gun like that. They didn't have to question it. They didn't say we had to wait for an investigation. This is on purpose. This is on purpose. It's the same way how they're able to call the Israeli people that have been released by Hamas. They call them hostages, but they want to call the Palestinians that were released by the state of Israel prisoners. And we can get into that as well. Are all of those the Palestinians? Were all of them guilty? Were they convicted in a court of law? I don't think so. The IDF has been known to go to Palestinian homes, and if they can't find the person that they're looking for, they'll take one of their family members instead and imprison them. These are people that have not been convicted. They've just been told that we're taking you, we're arresting you. But they're not considered hostages. They're prisoners. See how that works?
When you have three people walking down the street speaking Arabic, I think the presumption is that it may well have been a hate crime, but that's what this investigation is about. And I want to applaud local law enforcement and the federal officials who apprehended a suspect as quickly as they did. We appreciate that.
What would you say to Vermont residents who might be scared tonight about political or religious violence in a way that they might not have been before all this?
Well, I think I have to say that sadly, it's not just Vermont. I think the people of Vermont are shaken by this, no question. But that all over the country, what we are seeing is a rise in Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. In fact, just a few weeks ago, I called for a classified briefing from the FBI on just that issue, which we'll be holding next week.
This is where Bernie actually missed the boat, because here's how I'm going to connect Bernie Sanders to this. I showed you a video about a week ago in 2014 where Bernie Sanders was questioned by his own constituents about what was happening to the Palestinian people. So this is before he ran for president. Bernie Sanders told them to shut up. He didn't want to hear it. When it comes to this particular issue around Israel and Gaza, Bernie Sanders was never great on this issue. For years, he has misled people. For years, he has not been honest about the atrocities that are happening to the Palestinian people in Gaza and in the West Bank. He was not 100% honest about what was happening to them. So if there are people that are shocked in Burlington, it's because you dropped the ball, Bernie Sanders. Those are your constituents. If you would have been honest to them back when you had that town hall in 2014, when you told your own constituents to shut up, more people would not have been shocked. But I'm willing to bet if you were to talk to other minority groups there in Burlington, they're not shocked.
This country has gone through so much in terms of racism and bigotry that we don't want to descend once again into attacking each other because of our religion or where we were born. So I hope that cooler heads prevail.
So what do you do about it? What do leaders in Washington on both sides of the aisle do about this?
Well, it's not just both sides of the aisle. It's going into the streets and making it clear that in a democratic society, people can have different opinions on matters of great importance, the war or whatever it may be. But violence and hatred and hate crimes are not the answer.
Now, Bernie says going into the streets, but he's not talking about himself. The Oracle says, and those 3 young men were wearing garb that identified them as Arab. It was a hate crime. There you go.
In a civilized democratic society, we talk about those issues. We get involved in politics. We fight for our beliefs. You don't go around shooting people.
You recently wrote an op-ed for the New York Times. It was entitled Justice for the Palestinians and Security for Israel. In part, you called for a, quote, significant extended humanitarian pause. What has your reaction been to the pause that has been in place for 4 days now and the release of the hostages so far?
Well, John, I'm delighted that it is taking place. I think everybody is gratified to see children and elderly people returning back to their families, and we hope more of that takes place. But we should not also forget is that this pause has has created a situation where there's going to be a huge amount of humanitarian aid coming into Gaza. And we should be clear about this. Gaza today is a total humanitarian disaster. It's not just that 12,000 people have been killed, as horrible as that is. We're talking about 1.5 million people displaced, not enough water, not enough food, not enough medical supplies, not enough fuel.
But it was a humanitarian disaster before October 7th, which Bernie Sanders did not want to admit in that 2014 video. He did not want to admit that. That's why he told the guy to shut up. The UN had declared this to be a humanitarian crisis before October 7th happened, and Bernie Sanders was nowhere to be found. This is why I said before, he was never great on this particular issue. Disaster.
So right now, what we are beginning to see today, as a matter of fact, I think some 200 trucks came in. Tomorrow, I am told there'll be 250 trucks for humanitarian aid. That's long needed, and that is going to save lives. So we certainly hope that that continues.
So in multiple recent polls, President Biden has lost support among left-leaning voters under the age of 35. This is a group that was a huge part of your base during your presidential campaigns in 2016 and 2020. Have you heard criticisms from your supporters about the president's positions on this conflict or other things? And what have you been telling them?
Well, look, I think everybody, whether you're 18 or whether you're 80, is horrified by what's going on. We were horrified by Hamas's disgusting terrorist attack against Israel and the slaughter of 1,300 innocent people. I think we're horrified by Israel's response, which, as I mentioned before, has killed 12,000 people. And what the real worry is here is that some 70% of those people are women and children.
Let's be clear here. Bernie Sanders wasn't horrified until a couple of days ago, because in the beginning, when people were asking him to call for a ceasefire, Bernie Sanders was not willing to do so. There were other people in the House and in the Senate that were willing to come forward and say we need to call for a ceasefire before Bernie Sanders was even willing to utter, okay, we need to stop the indiscriminate bombing of women and children. So we got to remember that, again, Bernie Sanders, at the end of the day, when it was time for you to meet that moment, before it was popular to do so, Bernie Sanders did not meet that moment, because Bernie Sanders, at the end of the day, is still a coward. And this is what I want people to understand. This is why we cannot sit here and believe that if he would have won the presidency, that he would have actually fought back against big pharma and fought back against the billionaires and fought back against all this big money interest. Because at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders, when it's time to sit down, shut up, and put his head down, that's what he does. We saw this with the crisis in Yemen, when he had the opportunity to bring forth legislation on the Senate floor, and Joe Biden told him not to do it, and Bernie Sanders fell back. This is who Bernie Sanders is. Again, we talked about illusions tonight. Someone who presents an illusion that they are more radical and that they're going to fight. But at the end of the day, they are going to cower to the establishment leadership of the Democratic Party, whether they're a part of the party or not. He is just the illusion to make you believe that you have someone in there fighting for you when you actually do not.
So I think people are just totally disgusted about what's going on. And one of the things that I have called for is to say, look, we are friends of Israel, but Israel cannot disregard international law. They cannot kill women and children indiscriminately. And if we're going to give them money, and they need money to defend themselves, what if we're going to give them money?
No, they don't need money to defend themselves. The U.S. government gives Israel $8.3 billion a year. Their army is superior to what Gaza has because Gaza does not have an army. Their military equipment is more superior to what Gaza has, again, because the U.S. has been giving them billions of dollars for all these years. So we don't need to continue to give them money for them to fight. They have everything that they need in order to fight. By the way, how's that working out in a country like Ukraine, where we've given them billions and billions of dollars, military weapons and aid, and they're losing? They're losing, right? So they don't need that. What is also very concerning to me is that he will go on record and say we are a friend of Israel, but I guess they are not a friend of the Palestinian people. We have to pay very close attention to the words that they use and when they use them, who they call a friend. And just because they don't call the Palestinian people the enemy, you still make it very clear when you say that you're a friend of Israel and you don't say anything about the relationship that you have with the Palestinian people. Now, how do you expect Palestinian Americans to feel about that?
Then they have got to obey international law, and that means, among other things, an extended humanitarian pause. It means making sure that we address the crisis in the West Bank, not only in Gaza, where Israeli settlers are killing Palestinians and throwing them off their land. It means,
but that's your friend. You hear this? But see this? Think about this. This is your friend. This is who you're friends with.
people are women and children. So I think people are just totally disgusted about what's going on. And one of the things that I have called for is to say, look, we are friends of Israel, but Israel cannot disregard international law. They cannot kill women and children indiscriminately. And if we're going to give them money, and they need money to defend themselves, but if we're going to give them money, then they have got to obey international law, and that means, among other things, an extended humanitarian pause. It means making sure that we address the crisis in the West Bank, not only in Gaza, where Israeli settlers are killing Palestinians and throwing them off their land. It means that we have to be thinking long term about what the final, how do we solve this problem?
I don't know about you guys, but my friends aren't killing people and throwing them off their land. So think about what Bernie Sanders just said. That's who the U.S. government considers a friend. Not the people being oppressed. Now, you can't stand up here in the United States. You can't stand up here and say that you care about oppressed people. Oh, I care about the minorities. I stand with the Black people. I stand with the Latino people. I stand with minorities. I stand with oppressed people. You can't stand up there and say that, particularly as a politician, which Bernie Sanders has done. You can't stand up there and say that. And then when it comes to other oppressed groups that do not fit U.S. economic interest, especially when it comes to resources, you leave them out to dry. Pay attention to these things. Pay attention to what they say. Thank you for the super chat, Dwayne. AIPAC should have to register as agents of a foreign government. That is what they are. B says, fact, Sabby, if you're old enough to remember, you get it. We can't have that again. Right. I think you're talking about September 11. Thank you for the super chat, Andrew Yu. Hi, Sabby. Hello, Andrew. Cassio says it's called a hijab. Thank you. And thank you for the super sticker, Lee. Thank you so much. Mr. Positivity, I am an American-born white Muslim who has been threatened online and even at the grocery store, where my kufi gave me away the latest time. My brothers and sisters with brown skin have it much worse. I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Positivity. JB says, once we turn about 8 years old, we are seen as a threat. That is 100% true. Tia says, except the police. Even at 12 years old, a black boy would be attacked or killed by them. Bingo. Thank you for the super chat, Victor. Bernie is going to the feds for help is a new low. And thank you for the super chat. Where is the love? Gave up on lying, sell out mainstream media networks. Great broadcast, sister. Enjoy watching your channel every day. Thank you so much and welcome.